Halloween parties hosted by the author of this book have got to be, oh boy, they've got to be scary. The Hand That Pulls You Under is a short story collection written by a man named James Flynn. He actually is a subscriber to this YouTube channel. He reached out to me and was like, hey man, I'm coming out with this book. You do a lot of book reviews. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I'd love to, hopefully have you do a video and post it on your channel. And he sent me a story. I believe the story was, let's see, which one was it? It was Guilt Trip. And so I read that story of his. He just sent it to me in an email. And I was like, wow, this actually has some merit to it. Sure, if you want to send me the rest of the stories, by all means do, Mr. Flynn. And so he did. He sent me the book. He sent it to me as a, as an online version, just as a file on my computer, rather. And I went ahead and read all the stories, and this is my book review of The Hand That Pulls You Under. There are 10 short stories in this short story collection, and each and every one of them is either a horror story or beyond strange. I'm going to go ahead and go through a number of the stories that I thought were, I think, really, really great, and I'll also talk about some of the stories that I thought could have been a bit better. But overall, I will say I was pretty damn impressed with The Hand That Pulls You Under. It was a very creative short story collection. Some of the stories in here, I was like, wow, like that's a legitimately very, I have not read a story like that before. And I would say that most of the writing in this short story collection is actually quite good. There are some parts where I think things could have been cleaned up a bit better, but there are some stories where I'm like, man, that was pretty, I didn't see any writing flaws. That was really good. And so, yeah, overall, I would already just say I would recommend that that you read this short story collection if you're into horror stories and just freaky tales that will freak you out. This is for you. However, I will say with that recommendation, there are some stories in this collection that people talk about trigger warnings and stuff. I don't usually give those with any of my content, but there are a couple stories in here where I legit, at the end of it, I was like, that was messed up. And, to a person, I've not had a whole lot of trauma in my life, but to a person who has had some trauma and, gets really freaked out by very, crazy sexual things or crazy violent things, there are some stories in here to probably avoid. And I'll let you know at least about a couple of them. Yeah, I just wanted to have that little asterisk next to my recommendation, because if something really freaks me out and really messes me up for 5 minutes, to some people they'll be messed up for 5 days. So yeah, just wanted to put that out there. One of my very favorite stories in this collection was The Residents of Hilltop Harrows. Now, this was a story that was not really a horror story so much as it was this strange mystery with I'll just give you a brief description of the setting. There's this guy, it's been a while since I've read this story, I can't remember his name, but he goes to this place, this basically run-down building, and it's often called, Hilltop Harrows, and he discovers that there's this whole culture and community inside this old building. I believe it was a factory or something. I haven't read the story in a couple months, but there was this whole culture of people in there. And it's a really well-developed and fleshed out culture within this, it's a very short story, but you feel man, this is really interesting. And this guy, he goes there, and basically what you have to look forward to with this story is a lot of weird, whimsical, mysterious, awe-inspiring things surrounding mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms. And there's this situation involving a lot of psychedelic mushrooms that unfolds that is really weird, really thought-provoking, and just plain cool. I thought it was a really creative story, a really, honestly, I haven't read another story like it, so I would, of all the stories in this book, The Residents of Hilltop Harrows was certainly one of my favorites. The next story in the book is called Buried Memory. This story is also very interesting, much like Hilltop Harrows. I don't think it was as well executed as Hilltop Harrows, but it has a really interesting concept. Basically, the idea is you can go to this company that erases either parts of your memory or completely erases like your memory in a lot of ways. And there's a crime mystery aspect to this story that's really cool. I just thought, I don't know, I felt that some of the story could have been probably executed a little bit better, a little bit more, I just think a little bit more could have been done with the concept, because it was a really cool concept. The next story on the table of contents was The Drifter. This story was really cool. This story, I really liked The Drifter. There's one aspect of it that I wasn't a huge fan of. I don't want to spoil, but the concept of The Drifter, it was super cool. It's like, basically the idea is that this film crew, this documentary crew, is trying to go and film this like weird figure that showed up throughout history. This like hazy silhouette, but simultaneously somewhat solid figure that is often seen around the world and has been seen around the world for a long time. And they're interviewing people and all this stuff about this figure. You've seen it, people have seen it for centuries, and we're gonna finally go and film it because there was a recent sighting or whatever. They go to this place where there was this sighting, and what the Drifter actually ends up being is a really cool thing. I really liked it. That was certainly, much like Hilltop Harrows, one of my favorite stories. I don't think it was quite as good as Hilltop Harrows because, I don't know, I just don't think it wrapped up. I don't think the Drifter wrapped up as well. But there's some awesome stuff in the Drifter. Really cool poetry and just very, very creative. The next story on the table of contents to discuss would be Sadistic Climax. This story is very sadistic, and there's quite a climax. This is one of those stories I would say, I literally at the end of this I went, that was messed up. Like I was like, I don't know, oof. Like, it gets really graphic, this story, and I can't say that I really dug this story. It was an interesting concept for sure, but it was very, very, very explicit. And if you're not into the way that it's explicit, it's very violent, like sexually violent. It's explicit in a sexually violent way. If you're not into that, or that disturbs you, or that can, get your imagination going on a, not so positive track, probably don't read that one. Next story that I think is worth discussing would be Be Careful What You Wish For. This story is really cool. It's a very strange murder mystery, has a cult-like aspect to it. I thought it was a really neat concept. I thought it could have been fleshed out a little bit more. I felt like the story could have been longer, just because kind of towards the end there was a lot of things where I was like, there are a couple gaps here that could be filled in to make this more believable. It's about this author who, he writes a book and he's hoping it does well. It's like this murder mystery type book, and nobody really reads it, and he gets kind of consumed out of, anger that nobody's reading and frustration, and so he decides to do something very crazy to try and inspire a cult following. And boy, oh boy, does it get wild. The next story in this book that I think is really worth discussing is Pussy Payback. This story was great. And apparently, if I'm not mistaken, this story was actually a true story from the author's life. He wrote it in a narrative story format, but as I understand it, it's based on real events. I believe it says that somewhere in the foreword or something along those lines. I can't reread it right now, but that story, Pussy Payback, the fact that if I'm not mistaken, if it is a true story, man, that's a tragic true story. Very sad true story. But I thought Pussy Payback, it was maybe the best written story in the entire collection. It's either Pussy Payback or The Residents of Hilltop Horrors. Both are great. And Pussy Payback, that was really good. Really good. It's not really a horror story. And it's not like a cosmic psychedelic story either. It's just a sad true story that is weird. In a similar vein to the weirdness of the other stories. The next story in the table of contents is The Infinite Joyride. I must admit, The Infinite Joyride and The House of Human Pleasures, I ended up not reading. I mean, I read part of them, but after reading Sadistic Climax, I kind of was like, if it ends in the same, really messed up way as that story, or similarly messed up, I don't know how that's gonna... I was reading these things at night. I was like, I don't know if I want to go to bed reading those. So I can't really give much. I don't have much to say on The Infinite Joyride or The House of Human Pleasures, but I'm willing to bet that they're interesting. But from the get-go, James Flynn, he writes poems at the beginning of each story, and they kind of give you an idea of what the tone of the story is going to be. And in those stories, it had a lot to do with sex in the opening poems. And so I was just kind of like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to have a sadistic climax deja vu situation. But, I'm sure they're well-written stories, and I could be wrong about them. Maybe I'll read them at some point, but I just never got really around to reading them. The other two stories in the table of contents that I can talk about are Guilt Trip and Planetary Perpetrator. Guilt Trip was the first story I read in this collection. This was the story that Mr. Flynn sent me in an email. I read it, was like, wow, that's wild and weird. This story has a whole lot to do with LSD. It's in many ways a really terrifying horror story. I can't really explain it without spoiling it, but LSD and psychosis and violence is a central aspect to this story. And it's pretty much a perfect story. I think the ending could have been landed a little bit better, but I think it just... some things could have been done to make it work more smoothly. But honestly, it was a story where I was like, whoa, I do want to read the rest of this guy's stories. Please do send me the rest of them. So I would say that I would recommend it as a very good horror story overall. And Planetary Perpetrator, this story has a lot to do with, just artificial intelligence being used in the court system. And it's it has this robot machine that's the judge of this court, and it's carrying out this trial. This story, I think, had a really cool concept, but it was too short, and it was too quick. It was there just really was not enough. There's just not enough to the story. Great concept, but I just don't think it was executed as well as it could have been. I don't exactly know how to grade The Hand That Pulls You Under, because I so rarely read short story collections that I can't really compare this short story collection to any other short story collections, because I haven't read a short story collection in years. All I can say is that I was impressed with this short story collection. I gave my thoughts and opinions on most of the stories in the book. Some were definitely better than others, but honestly, overall, they were all interesting. And I think Mr. Flynn, if he continues writing and continues to work on his crafts, he'll be able to iron out some of the flaws in some of these stories and churn out books that are damn near flawless and even better than the best stories in here, which were really good. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that'll do it for me regarding The Hand That Pulls You Under. But now I want to know, what are your thoughts? Is this a short story collection you would be interested in buying and reading? What sounded the most interesting to you from what I talked about in this video? Whatever your thoughts and comments might be, please leave them in the comment section below. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, if you liked this video, please like it and subscribe, tell your friends about the channel. And never forget to